In this lesson, we'll be covering Autodesk Inventor's project files. Now, the name project file is kind of a misnomenclature because it's not really about the project. It really should be called the setting file. So let's take a look. If you click on projects, come up with a list. Now, these are my existing projects. Whenever you first open Inventor, you'll only have a handful that are predefined. The project file stores everything about what you're going to be doing in Inventor. It controls your workspace location. It controls your styles, your templates, your content center. It controls library paths, frequently used subfolders, everything about what you're going to be doing inside of Inventor. Autodesk recommends using only one project file. And the reason you want to use one project file is Autodesk Vault does a wonderful job of managing data. You want to use the Vault to manage all of your data, and more than likely if you're in a multiple workgroup environment, you already do. Because of this, Vault does not work well with more than one project file. It likes to handle all of the linking and modifying of files itself. So we only want to use the one project file whenever possible. There are some exceptions. When you need to send out a part or a design to someone, it's a very good tool for that. And then whenever you have customers that you do not want to share files. So if you have customer A that makes a widget and they use a certain socket head cap screw, and customer B uses the same socket head cap screw, but they use a different spec and require it to be off spec from customer A, then you may not want to mix the two libraries together and you may want to keep those separate. The way the actual project file works is anything underneath the project file Inventor can find. Let's take a look at the Infinite Skills Inventor Essentials project file that I've created. Underneath here, I can tell that it's a single user project file because the first line here gives me the location and it tells me, am I using a style library? This one in particular is read only. If I need to change that, I can come here and make it read write if I was actually going to create my own styles for appearances. Inventor has actually broken out the appearance library and material libraries into two separate databases. This is where you can come and modify them if you have certain material requirements. Certain companies that have very particular material specs will actually come in here and modify them and make their own. Or if you use a custom color, if you use a Wilson Art color 123, then you can come in here and take a picture of that or a bitmap and create your own image of that and add that to this library. You can set your workspaces. We also have our folder options for design data, templates, content center files. This is where we'd set this. And then we have our options down here at the bottom. The biggest one down here at the bottom, or biggest two, I guess I should say, are old files to keep. I like to set this to 3. It's a lot like the backup files in AutoCAD. And one thing you would always have with AutoCAD is you would hit save twice and then you'd lose your backup. You can save back as many as you want. Matter of fact, if you put in a -1 here, it will save all of your old versions. Now, because of hard drive space is not unlimited and you don't want to take the time to go clean it up, I actually set it to 3. I find that's a good number to keep. Anything more than that, I let the Vault keep it through versions. This is just going to give me a couple backups while I'm working during the day. The next option down is using unique file names. This forces it that anything underneath this project file that has 2 files that have the same name will not let you save it. This is really, really important. Inventor, unlike AutoCAD, takes and tracks all of the files for you. In AutoCAD, if you had an XREF, it was very hard to keep track of. With Inventor, it's very easy to keep track of where all the files are because it does it for you. Because of this, if you have 2 files that are the same name, it's going to be like 2 trains hitting head on. Which one wins? Last one in usually wins. We don't want that to happen. So we say use unique file names, meaning that it'll force you to give it another name and protect you from accidentally overwriting yourself. Now let's take a look at creating a new project file. I come down here and I say new. It's asking me, hey, I've not saved my latest changes. I say, yes, I do want to save them. First thing it asks me is, do you want to do a new Vault project or a new single user project? If you are already in a Vault work group, you already have a project file created for you. So in this instance, I'm going to say a new single user project. And I'm going to say Project IE for Inventor Essentials. So next. This one can or cannot have libraries. It doesn't really matter at this point. I'm going to leave the libraries out and hit finish. It says, hey, this doesn't exist. Do you want to create it? By all means, yes. So now I have my new project. If I need to change to a different project, simply double click on it. And then let's say I've determined that I didn't need that project. I just created it for training or something like that. I can right click on the project that I no longer want, go to delete, and that project is now gone. If I come up here and click on this designs project, hit done. Whenever I go to open, it actually gives me everything about this padlock because it was the padlock project. One of the really neat things about Inventor is whenever you need to send a design out to an outside vendor or another user, if they're not in the same work group, in the past that was very hard to do. Inventor has a very nice feature for sending everything all at once. Come up here to the big I, go to Save As, and go to Pack and Go. And what Pack and Go does is it gets all of the files that are needed to create this padlock. I can say, hey, get just the model files or the linked files. Linked files would be things like drawing files, presentation files. It would also be any kind of spreadsheets or anything that are associated to any of those files. And it would get everything there. I could tell it to skip libraries. You know, if you have standard libraries and you send to somebody else that already has your library, they don't necessarily want to have to go find all the nuts and bolts and put into their library if they already have them. Tell it to skip styles. If you've already sent this to them before, or it's, inside the same company, you're just sending it to another user, you can skip this information that may be duplicate. You can copy it to a single path, or you can keep folder hierarchy. I'm a big fan of keeping folder hierarchy. When you get into very complex assemblies, it gets very complicated keeping track of everything. Once I get everything set the way I want right there, hit search now. It goes out and finds 229 files that are associated with this padlock design. I can say any kind of referencing files. These are all your IPNs, IDWs, anything that references this assembly. So not only does it go down below the assembly, what makes up the assembly, but it also goes up and says what is looking at this assembly. Hit add. So now I'm up to 249. I can give it a name, C-test padlock. Now I can come over and hit start. It's asking me, because this folder does not exist, if I want to create it. I say yes. Now it's gone through and it's packaged everything that is associated with this assembly and put it in a nice, neat folder for me. I can zip this up and email it to someone. They can use the automatically created project file, and now it is part of my assembly, and they can use whatever they need to do to modify this padlock. Hit done. Because of the way the project files work, if there are any files open, you cannot change the project file. If I were to come up here and I hit get started, go to projects, try to modify it, it tells me, hey, I cannot change this while there's a drawing open. Only way to modify a project file or change to a different project file is to close. Now I can go and change back to my Inventor Essentials project file. So now we've seen how to create a project file. We've seen how to create a pack and go. I'm going to show you how to open an existing project file. Once again, if you're in a work group and you're in an existing office, they've already got a project file set up. You can get them to send that to you, or you can find out where it is out on the network. If you hit browse and you browse out to where that is on the network somewhere, you can find that project file. You select the IPJ file, which is our project file type, hit open, and it'll bring up that project file that you just found. It's very easy to do. One thing that I like to do with Inventor is use libraries, meaning that I like to reuse parts over and over again. The defining part of a library, though, is the fact that it is read-only. If you take and buy a part and you use that part in 10 assemblies and it's the exact same part, you don't need to modify that part. If for whatever reason and the vendor comes in and they change the part and first 10 you buy are exactly the same and then part number 11 through 20 are different, then you need to create a new part file. It can be a revision file, it can be part B. Even if it's the exact same part number, it needs to be a new file because the files you've already created that use the older file still exist. And you don't want to modify those in case you ever need to go back and do maintenance on them. You need to know what was put into that file. So the best way to do that is to make a library folder and make it read-only, meaning that you can't modify it at all. You can only read it. How do you modify those files if you need to modify them? Let's say you accidentally modeled something wrong. You put a 1/2-inch hole in it, come to find out it was a 5/16 hole instead, and you need to modify all those files. The way I do that is I actually create a library project file. So I say new single user project file, and I'm going to move this over so I can see my paths. Say new, and I'm actually going to call this one library. And then I'm going to browse to this same location as this other project. And infinite skills. And I'm going to make a new folder underneath there. And I'll just call that one lib, let's say. So you can see that they're actually two separate things. So I have my library project in the lib folder. Finish. So now what I can do is if I need to modify something, I can come in here and modify it. But then I come back over to my infinite skills project file, click libraries, click the plus sign. And the reason I did this so that you could see that this wasn't already created. So instead of using the predefined library folder, we have the one we just called lib. So now I have my read-only library. Save. So if I need to modify my library parts, I will actually change the project file to this library project file. That's the only time I ever change back and forth between project files. The rest of the time, I highly encourage you to use a single project file. Once you get into Autodesk Vault, you'll understand why it's so important to use that single project file for everything.